So, how about a Ruby Bloom, Harry Ruby tune?
Sounds good.
Rubies everywhere.
Rubies whole family of rubies.
This is just a little tribute to one of our favorite singers, Rosie Clooney.
Oh, yeah.
And this is from 1945. It seems quite relevant.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it sure does.
Okay, let's give it a try.
Here we go.
A cottage small is all I'm after, not one that's spacious and wide, a house that rings with joy and laughter, and the ones you love inside. I don't believe in fretting or grieving, why mess around with strife? I never was cut out to step and strut out. Give me the simple life. Some find it pleasant, dining on pheasant. Those things roll off my knife. Just serve me tomatoes and mashed potatoes. Give me the simple life. A cottage small is all I'm after, not one that's spacious and wide, a house that rings with joy and laughter, and the ones you love inside. Some like the high road, I like the low road, free from the care and strife. Sounds corny and seedy, but yes indeed, give me the simple life. I greet the dawn when I awaken. The sky is clear up above. I like my scrambled eggs and bacon, served by someone that I love. Some like the high road, I love the low road, free from the grief and strife. It sounds corny and seedy, but yes, indeed, give me the simple, give me the simple life.
I didn't know what to do at the end. I forgot.
I don't think we really talked about an ending, but that was nice.
It was nice.
Yeah. It's simple.
Yeah.
Hi, Beegie. How are you
Hi,
doing?
Monica. I'm doing fine. How are you?
You know, besides the humidity, my hair looked so cute earlier, and now the humidity has just killed it. And we're going to be talking with somebody in sunny California, so
Yeah.
just going to be a little jealous of him just a little bit. But you doing okay?
Me? Yeah. I'm doing great.
We've the last few happy hours have been loads of fun. I mean, the trio, I'm still have a hangover from that one, but that's okay. And then Tamir Hendelman, I mean, seriously, he's so talented, and another Southern California guy. He's just a couple blocks away, I think, from our guest this week. So, but anyway, we have a great show. But to start with, that was Give Me the Simple Life. That was our tribute to Rosie Clooney. And I can't think of many singers that I know who she makes it seem so easy just singing the song. There's really nothing easy about what she does. You got to be born with that swing. You got to be born with that kind of timing, that rhythm, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I do. And the ears for the pitch.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
One of my favorite stories. I got to see her. Roger worked with her for a long time. We should talk about that on a future episode. But I saw her at the Hollywood Bowl with the Count Basie. It was the Ghost Orchestra, and her nephew, who was just kind of rising in fame, was in the audience, but he was a huge heartthrob already. Like, we all thought he was just the greatest thing. And he wasn't nearly as famous as he is now, but everyone knew who he was because he was gorgeous. And she said, my nephew's in the audience tonight, and he's in a ball cap right over there. And it was like the Beatles were on the stage. It was a piercing scream.
Little girls screaming.
I was one of them. And yeah, I was definitely one of them. And she wanted to dedicate the next song to him. So she counted off. She's like, we're in the money. We're in the money. It was brilliant. Everything about it was perfect. I just love it. I felt so special being able to see her in concert before she passed. So, okay. So let's talk about our guest.
Yeah.
Do you want to say something about Dirk?
Well, there's so many things to say. I don't know where to begin.
He's had such a fabulous career.
He's had a wonderful career, and I just got to know him kind of over the internet when he said that he liked our music.
Yeah.
And so I want to talk about that some and how that came about and all. But I've looked at his resume, and this guy is an acting machine because he has been all of your favorite shows. Criminal Minds and Law and Order are my two favorites. He's been on both of those. MASH, he's been on that. You just look around and he's been in everything. And we're going to talk about that too, because I like the idea of people who are character actors, because they're very much like piano players who are just the sidemen, that just kind of prop up the rhythm sections.
They're an integral part of the performance.
And
yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's easier. Actually, it's easier to make a living, I think, that way, rather than going for like huge stardom. You can just work all the time, being different characters and different musicians. I think it's very similar to what we do sometimes. So,
and anyway, but at the same time, he is a regular on a very hot show right now, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and we're having a blast. We watch it on Hulu. We'll talk about that with him, but we're catching up. We're not at the end yet, but we're towards the end. And anyway, but there's so much more. I mean, that's how people maybe recognize him now, but I think Happy Hour is so cool because we get to talk about the other stuff too. So, here is Dirk Blocker, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes,
Dirk. Hi. Cheers, Dirk.
Cheers to you. Cheers to you, indeed.
Cheers.
So happy to be here.
Your drink looks fancy. What are you drinking?
Well, no, it's just first of all, I can't do anything with my hair with this humidity.
I know. Oh, I know. The hair thing, Dirk.
But I'm having a little lime, based cocktail from California.
Nice.
And
nice.
By way of Mexico, there's a little tequila in there. Just a little.
Oh, a little. Yeah.
Yeah. Just a touch here and there.
Just a touch. Yeah.
It always starts with just a touch, and then.
I know. And then then the trouble starts.
And then the honesty happens.
You guys know Rosemary Clooney. And my wife and I are big jazz fans, and that's why we adore both of you. But we saw Diana Krall just before she was huge. Mm-hmm. She was on her way up.
Yeah.
She was playing our little town in beautiful theater.
Yeah.
And she announced it, and it was just it's one of those concerts, that come around once in a while where you could hear a pin drop. She didn't need a microphone. She didn't need anything. It was just fantastic.
Yeah.
And but she introduced some people who'd come up from Los Angeles to see her, and they were Rosemary Clooney and Maynard Ferguson.
Oh my gosh.
Come up to see her, yeah.
Well, watching the Happy Hours, Chris Brown, Bee Gees drummer, played with Maynard for quite some time. So they probably have lots of stories. The one thing I was going to say, and then I'm going to let you guys chat for a little bit, but on that Hollywood Bowl concert that I was speaking of, they introduced some of the other upcoming acts. And Diana was already very well respected in the jazz world, but she was just starting to rise in the commercial music world. You know what I mean? Verve was really pushing her as a big artist. And they had a poster or something that said, you know, welcoming new artist Diana Krall. And I always thought that was so funny and surreal all at the same time.
Yeah.
So,
Quigley just went to the mantelpiece, so
Quigley is
down
headed
for a
this
while.
way. He and I need to do a little bartending. So I'm going to let you guys chat for a few minutes. I'll be nearby. And Dirk, we're so happy you're doing this. Thank you.
I've been looking forward to this.
You guys, we couldn't be. I couldn't be happier to be here. My wife and I both are such fans. And actually, BG, I don't expect you to remember this, but we actually met you. We were some of the people in line to meet the meet and greet at one of your Steinway demonstrations. Yes, and we got your autograph, and we took a picture.
Was this in L.A.?
In Los Angeles, yes.
Yeah. I'll be darned. Well,
I wish that we would have had
you are.
Yeah, next time we're going out afterwards. We're gonna.
We actually were supposed to go this year too, but it's been postponed because of the virus. Everything has been postponed.
Yeah, right.
And
see you in a minute.
Good.
I was interested to find out that you were your dad was Haas on Bonanza,
right?
And you have said that you followed him around and kind of learned what you're doing by watching him and the people that he worked with and stuff. You want to kind of tell us about how you came up into the acting business? It sounds fascinating.
Well, yeah, you know, one of the only ways really to spend much time with him when I was a wee lad was to go with him to work when I wasn't in school. Because in those days they shot like 10 and a half months out of the year, and you know on weekends they were doing personal appearances and so forth and so on. So a great way to spend time with him was to be with him at work, and he had so much fun, and most of those guys on that show did. That wasn't hard to want to do that, but probably the best acting classes anybody could ever hope for, I was privy to, which is to see my dad and the guest actors, and they had tremendous people that did that show.
Oh yeah.
And they would be, you know, sitting around talking about the news, talking about politics, talking about sports, baseball, just regular talk. And then I'd watch these adults say, "We're ready for you guys." And these guys would step up, and from the time they left their chair to the time they got on the set, their focus became as pure as they could make it. And suddenly they're crying, they're laughing, they're arguing, they're fighting, and so what I was really lucky enough to witness is that they were living in the world of make-believe. Like children do, really, except on an adult level. Some of the best acting classes anybody could ever hope for, and I was very lucky to be able to see some of that. And then they'd come back to their chairs and they said stuff. So anyway, yeah. So Willie Mays is the greatest world, you know.
That's great. Well, that leads me back a little bit to what I was saying earlier about musicians also, but all of it has to do with an apprenticeship from one young person to the father or whoever. I followed my dad around. He was a mechanic, and he ran a service at one of those big service stations where they do everything. They put cars back together, you know, but they don't do that anymore. Right. But I was a daddy girl because I was an only child, and he played guitar all the time. So he's the one that got me started on. We had an old dilapidated piano, and I would just try to keep up with him on the guitar, and then I would follow him when he would go and play at somebody's house. It was all mostly house stuff back then, and they'd have a fiddle player and maybe another guitar player or two, and I'd sit there just enchanted just listening to the instruments. And when I got in college, I also had kind of an apprenticeship because the guys in my freshman class were coming back from Korea, and they were on the GI Bill. They were all going to be band directors, but they'd been in bands like the Army bands, and they'd also been on the road with big bands and stuff. So I was 16, they were 25, and they took me in like a little sister, you know. And that's how I learned, by watching like you did.
Okay.
And I think that's probably the best way to do it. You
Yeah,
know, it's just,
yeah. There's a lot to be said for osmosis, isn't there? Yeah,
yeah.
and it's not to say that you don't need to, strengthen your muscles
Sure.
and develop yourself as best you challenge yourself a lot. I mean, I spent the better part of about 20 odd years in between jobs, either doing theater or working with a coach, and
Oh, yeah.
trying to there's someone wise once said 10,000 hours.
Oh, boy.
10,000 hours is essentially what, then you're ready to go. And so however you need to put that time in, that's what you need to do. But at any rate, yeah, osmosis can't beat it, I don't think.
I don't think so either. And I've been fascinated all my life with movies because, first of all, my mother would always take me to musicals when I was little. So I would see Debbie Reynolds and Doris Day and all those people, And then I would bribe her with maybe cleaning the house, helping clean the house or something, if I could go back and see the movie again so I could learn the tune that I wanted to learn out of the movie. But I was fascinated by all of that and how people make a living doing that. I remember the first time I quit a regular job and went freelancing. My father said, "Where's your paycheck going to come from?" And I said, "I don't know yet, but I know I will get one." And I did, but it was kind of uphill thing.
I hear you.
But when you step out like that and think, okay, I'm not working for anybody yet, but I'm waiting for people to call me to work.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I don't know if I did the right thing or not, but I did. I think I always had. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No.
I always had the feeling that I, somewhere by accident or something, that I always got to the right place in the right time. I don't know if you had that feeling or not, but
I have.
We were lucky to have the older people around us that were the people who were really doing all those things.
Right. Yeah.
So that stayed in my mind when I started reading your resume and everything. You've been so busy, and you've been in wonderful plays and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I've been very, very, very lucky. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, that sense of that faith really, that everything was going to work out. I had that too, but there were times when I had to think, since I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to pay the rent next month.
Right.
Not sure. And then, but lo and behold, usually, almost every time, something would happen, and there it is. There you go. There you go. There it goes. And I've coached young people as well in this field, and basically, I tell them, if you can be talked out of it, then you might want to think about whether this is really something you want to do, because it is very challenging. It is to be willing to, deal with the quiet times and the periods where you're on your own, and you have to kind of just steel yourself up and just go back to work and keep working and keep focusing on what you're doing. But if you can't be talked out of it, then you're in the right place. That's for sure.
Yeah, I had a couple of months ago. I did before the pandemic, I did a small concert in a small college in the South, and did a question and answer at the end of it. And the kids were college seniors, and were going to be band directors and piano players and all kinds of stuff. And they were asking me questions. And one little guy raised his hand and he said, what happens when you go on a gig and it's a bad gig? And I said, well, it depends on whether you have to pay the rent or not. And he said, well, what can you learn if you do that? And I said, well, for one thing, I think you could always learn that maybe you don't want to work for this guy again or something, you know. But I said, really, in all truthfulness, even if you go on a gig that you don't like or it doesn't pay much or whatever, if you need to pay the rent, you need to pay the rent. And then there's always a chance you'll meet somebody on a gig that knows somebody, and you might get other work from somebody that you just met.
Right.
So I would advise you when you're starting out to take everything you can get and go and do a good job. And then that will grow by word of mouth if you're on the right track and stuff. So it's a crapshoot.
But that's really great advice. I mean, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
You know, to me, it may not be a great gig because somebody's ego gets in the way, or the material is not exactly what you would rather be doing, or what have you.
Oh yeah.
But you know, in my line of work, for you, it's you're on, you know, hit it, you know, and in my line of work, it's action or curtain. Here you go. It doesn't really much matter, because once that starts happening, you are invited to join in a magical thing between audience and storytelling. And I'm sure there are similarities to playing music, but
yeah,
you know, it's like you know, it doesn't much matter how crazy the peripheral energy is. It's you when it's your time to have some. It should be fun. It really should be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's challenging, and it's sometimes a little daunting, and can be a little frightening or what have you. But once you get in there, if you're in that moment and if you're in that zone, man, there's nothing better. There's just nothing better.
Oh yeah. One of my, I have a late friend who was a famous jazz piano player, and unfortunately he lost his coronavirus battle last March. But he used to say when you were in a band that was really taking off musically in a piece of music, and everybody was on the same page, and you know, the drummer and the bass player and everybody, he said it's these things happen, and it's when your feet leave the ground. I thought that was a really good way to describe it, because you get in a zone.
Yeah, you can put up with a lot of the baloney.
Of
the business, because if you've experienced what you're talking about, it's all worth it to go back to that spot to find that again, and it'll come if you're patient. It'll come.
Exactly.
Did you really want to say baloney there?
Monica, excuse me, somebody knocked on the door. Is that the food?
Oh, really? Because I just put a sign up that said, "Don't knock." It's probably our delivery.
Oh, I'm hungry. Let's get it.
Yeah, we are. So we are definitely advocating for people to stay home, and mostly we cook from home, but about once a month or a couple times a month, we do want to support our local businesses, but we're a little phobic too, in the sense of we just want to make sure everything is handled properly. But we have a couple of favorite restaurants, and we did order tonight for that. But anyway, it'll be fine for now. I wanted to say, one of the things that I love, somebody taught me or said to me, and it just resonated, it stuck with me, was that you're having a conversation. In our case, it's a musical conversation. And even if you're reading from a script, it's still a conversation. And if you can't have it, great musicians can be on a gig together, but if they're not talking with each other, if they're just talking at each other, first, I think the audience figures it out. But it's also not fun, like you said, right? You know, it's got to be fun if people are just talking at each other.
Right.
And it's that beautiful chemistry, and that I'm generalizing something, but still, I think on the stage and on the screen, it's the same thing. it's not just about reading what's on a piece of paper. You've got to have that
Gotta
connection.
make it live.
Yeah.
The words are the very surface of it all. You want to go below the surface or through the window into that world of make believe where magic happens.
Yeah.
And when you can do that with the right people and with the right material and with the right circumstances, there's just nothing better. It's a high that's really kind of impossible to find anywhere else. You know?
It's magical.
Yeah.
And the one thing that we talked about, and I'm going to step off again, apparently, to go get the food from the front door. But you two probably have some really cool people in common. I don't know, but BG, you may want to fill Dirk in on your sag-aftra days and being on the board.
I'm curious about that. Yeah.
I'm guessing, based on all the television that we watch and the stories of not just the characters that she loves, she's truly she just loves I'm sorry, I'm talking about you like you're not here. BG loves the sidemen. She loves the character actors, and she knows half of them. Like, she'll talk about them, like, not just the character, but she'll be like, oh yeah, I had drinks with him at the bar in LA at this da-da-da-da-da. I love that. I mean, I can never get enough of that. But
after SAG, people always like to go to the bar, believe me. After all the negotiating we'd have to do.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Well, let's see, let me think. J.R. Horn.
Yeah, what brought it? How did you get involved with SAG-AFTRA? What was that?
Well, I was when my husband was still alive, he started a jingle business in the late 70s, and I was doing studio work and playing piano and things like that, and occasionally would sing in a background thing with 4 voices or something like that. But I had a writing bent, and actually started to be a journalist at one point, but music got a hold of me, and that was it. But I turned out to be pretty good at writing jingle lyrics and things like that. So I'd been a member of the AFM for decades. I think I'm one of the oldest members at our union local. One of the guys at AFTRA said, you need to just go ahead and join AFTRA too, because you're singing, and you know we got contracts to work with, and you need to be in on it. And so I did, and I did a lot of singing back then. I got on the local board. There were several singers that were friends of mine, and they said, come on, start coming to meetings with us and all this. And then I got nominated to go to a couple of conventions as a delegate, and then I got on the local board for a while. And then one of the girls that was on the national board left to move to California. And the director came to me and he said, I think you would be a real good candidate to take her place for the rest of the year. And if you want to run in the next election for it, that would be good too. But so he put me on the national board, and I wound up doing that. And I also was on the finance committee.
Wow.
And the lady that was the head of the finance committee had been married to the head arranger of, I think, Les Brown's band back in the 40s. And her name was Lillian Clark, and she was about 4 feet tall, and she was just a dynamo. And she came over to me. We had been friends and had drinks together and stuff, and a lot of the older singers and I hung out together, people that were retired or almost retired. And she came over to me during one of the elections, and she said, I want to put you on the finance committee. And I said, Lillian, I can barely do my checkbook. You know, I'm not all that great with figures. I mean, I was okay, but not, you know. And she said, that's not the point. You can think. You have a brain, and I want to use it. Mm. And so I was on there for about 3 or 4 years and hanging out with her and some of her. She had girlfriends that they had all like sung on Craft Music Hall in the 40s and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. It was just a wonderful batch of people to hang out with. And so I did that for like 13 years.
Wow.
And then I got so busy recording and starting to travel, then I left the band, left the board. But I'm still a union member.
Nice.
And now it's SAG and AFTRA.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's like I'm getting it everywhere. I've got 3 unions there to deal with. So, but I've always been a union girl.
Yeah, good deal. Yeah, character actors, you're talking about enjoying their their careers. I'm with you. My dad was a character actor, but he had incredible fame, really, kind of.
Oh, he did.
From that TV show he was on, and he was forever grateful for that because he'd been a school teacher and
really
he grew up in the Depression, and and he was actually in Los Angeles working on his doctorate for he was working on his thesis for his doctorate at UCLA. Because a friend had said, you should come out to Los Angeles because in those days the old westerns, they were all really big guys, Chuck Norris and Jim Arness, and these guys were all 6'5", and John Wayne. They all wanted to be John Wayne, and they said they can't have little guys to beat up. So the bad guys, the big bad guys who can walk and talk. And so my dad was out here trying to get his PhD, but the phone kind of started ringing, and it just never stopped. And
great.
Went from one to the next. But over the years, he was forever grateful for all the incredible good fortune that came his way. But he would often say, the guys who really have the career that I would really envy are the guys who can still go out to dinner with their families, can still go to baseball games with their boys, can still, go do things. Because in those days, there were only 3 channels, and Bonanza was a huge thing.
Yeah.
And he was so big physically, and his voice was so resonant that once he was in a place, everybody looked up to see who that big son of a bitch is over there. and then once he'd say something, we literally had a hard time going anywhere or doing much of anything, having much of a private life. And I never forgot that. I always thought, this is what I want to do, and this is what I feel like I have something to offer, but I'd be just fine being a second banana.
Mm-hmm.
On Brooklyn Nine-Nine, I'm like an 8th banana, but I'm the happiest 8th banana you've ever met in your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, your character is so funny and so smart. It's just it looks like fun every time you all are getting into it.
It is so much fun. And and the writers, I'd love to take credit for being funny, but the writers just give you the greatest stuff to do.
Yeah.
It's been an incredible experience. I mean, when I did the pilot for the show, I was told, if this thing goes, they might bring you back for 3 or 4 here and there. And I've done every single episode. I've done 143 episodes so far.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah, I'm very, very, very lucky. And I'm very grateful.
That is great. Did you ever know speaking of character actors, did you ever know Peter Leeds?
No, I don't know Peter Leeds.
He, you would know him if you saw him.
Sure.
He was in the 40s. I saw a lot of movies in the 40s when I was a kid. And he was always the either one of the mafia goons, but he had a nice personality and he always had tuxedos on, or he was a comic character. And he did a lot of work with Stan Freberg on Stan's albums. Huh. And he was one of the people I met at when I started going to the board meetings in LA and New York and everything. And he had been on the board since like 1945 or something like that, And he always would drive to the meetings, even if it was across the country. He and his wife would bring the car and they would bring their dog and stay in the hotel. He never flew. Cool. And so he was sitting back having coffee one day. We were taking a break and I happened to sit down next to him. And then I realized who he was. And I told him that I'd heard him on the Stan Freberg United States of America record. And so we talked And so every once in a while, I'd see him. He'd be sitting back in the back after we had some kind of big hoo-ha with somebody trying to pass a bill or something, and these things. Sometimes it was like being in politics. And I went back one day and sat down with him. And I said, "How you doing, Peter?" And he said, "I'm getting too old for this shit." And he was very frank all the time, but he was one of the people that I met. And it was fun for me because I had seen him when I was a kid in
Yeah.
movies and stuff, you know. And I saw a couple, the other guy, and I can't think of his name, he was one of the founders of the first chapter of AFTRA. And he was the floor walker that sold ties in Doris Day movies. And he would say, "Yes." He had this thing, I can't remember what his name was, but he was an old actor, and he was still out there, you know, doing the thing at the meetings and stuff. I enjoyed that so much because I'd seen him in so many movies.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, it's just
My wife and I probably watch more old film
mhm.
stuff from the past than we do a lot of the more modern stuff.
Oh, I do too.
Not to judge any of it; it's all good, but we just, we can't get enough of the old stuff. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got a lot of stuff that I grew up with, and my mother was a big fan of Robert Mitchum,
Oh yeah.
and so she would take me to the black and white movies where he was, you know, the big guy, always got the
Sure.
girl and
Yeah.
everything. And I located a dealer one time in Vegas.
That
who
sounds
sold-
shady.
Well,
Just right there. That
it
sounds
was
so
it
shady.
was a guy that sold portraits, autographed pictures of movie stars. I mean, he was an art dealer.
Yeah.
And he had a picture of Robert Mitchum signed,
Yeah.
you know, with the white shirt up to the elbows, you know, and everybody could swoon. And I gave it to my mother for Christmas. She was
nice.
thrilled. Yeah.
He had. I didn't know the man, but I have several friends who knew him pretty well, and he had a reputation for a really great sense of humor.
Yeah.
And one friend of mine said he would call me about 3 or 4 times a year, and he said I would know it was him because when I'd pick up the phone, what I'd hear on the other end of the phone from Robert Mitchum was, "Get a residual, get a residual, get a residual, get a residual."
I agree with that completely.
Oh, yeah.
Sure,
Always
I
sign
can't-
the contract. Always get a residual.
you bet.
So, with your dad, when did you realize he was extra cool? When did you know like what he did, and were you old enough when he started, or how old were you when he started, or were you born yet when he?
I've got a picture at home of me in a swaddling cloth in his chair for the pilot for Bonanza. So I was just a baby
Okay.
when I did that.
Okay. So wow.
But you know what? He was a really down to earth guy.
He seemed like that.
And he never, he kind of worked at making sure that we had a really balanced, as much as possible, life outside of the Hollywood, for lack of a better word. So really, he was just a dad to me. I mean, I never really, sometimes other kids would come up and say, "Your dad's Hoss," and I go, "Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I guess so. That's right." But it never seemed anything different to me than if he'd been a school teacher or if he'd been a carpenter or a gas station attendant, whatever. He was just he was dad, and he worked really hard at making sure that that's kind of how it stayed, as much as possible.
Yeah, that's great.
It was a job.
It was a job, and
He had a trade, I love that.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah.
I think if I had kids, that would be the one thing. I'd be like, this is a trade. You have to work hard. You have to show up on time.
Right.
You have to do your thing. It doesn't matter who you are or anything.
Right.
You have a gig to do. Do it. That's great.
Right. Yeah. I remember he instilled a lot in all of us, but something I remember him saying a lot when we were growing up as kids. He was already working, and he had it made. But he would leave for work really early every day.
Mm-hmm.
He would say to us, "I'd rather be an hour early than 1 minute late." And
Amen.
I never forgot that. And to this day, I I mean, knock on wood, and maybe there's one exception or two in 40-something years I've been doing this, but I'm always ahead of schedule. I don't.
I hope you forgive us for running behind on this recording then, because that's making me feel really weird right now.
What?
Oh, no.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm like, oh my God, we were like 35 minutes behind.
No. Listen, part of the business that I'm in is hurry up and wait, you know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It wasn't our fault. That's all I'm saying.
That's right. Well, that's because of technical issues. Yeah. But Orson Welles, someone visiting Orson Welles, supposedly, and I think it's a great story, whether it's true or not, someone was visiting him on the set, and they couldn't believe how much time he just was not on the set acting, because so much of it's just preparation with lights and sound and all these different things have to happen. And they said, I just can't get over it. Don't they know who you are? You're a genius. How could, you know, well, he said, my dear, they pay me to wait. I act for free.
Oh, wow. That's good.
Yeah. And I've never forgotten that, because that really helps. It really is a good thing to remind yourself of. And
Yeah.
it's the truth, you know.
That's poignant for sure.
Yeah.
So you shared with us a photo of your father with Frank Sinatra.
Frank Sinatra, yeah.
Yes, I did.
Would you like to tell?
Well,
you guys, share?
Sure. You guys have you with your bandmates, Beegie, and you guys have talked a little bit about Mr. Sinatra, and so I thought it was maybe appropriate to, because I love this photograph that I guess she's going to post up. But at any rate, my dad worked with Frank Sinatra a couple of times, and they just were kind of opposites. You know, Frank was this New Jersey skinny little guy. My dad was this guy from Texas, too big for anybody's business, and but they really liked working together. They worked from a similar vantage point as far as when the acting goes, which was, you know, kind of like, why do we need to do this again? What was wrong with that? Let's move on. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's get this thing. You know, why do we need to do it again? You know, let's move on. So when they could work together, they just loved it, because they could just fly through material rapidly and get it down, and they just had a ball. They had a great time working together. So at any rate, you know, he did a thing called Neil Simon thing called Come Blow Your Horn. He had a small part in that. And then 15 years later, after my dad had kind of made a name for himself, he was doing another film called The Lady in Cement, which wasn't a big hit of any kind. But again, he got to hang out with Frank Sinatra and really enjoyed. He just really enjoyed working with him.
Yeah, I always that's the one person that I haven't played for that I always wanted to play for.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, I also had an experience, not directly with Mr. Sinatra, but years later I was on a TV show called Baba Black Sheep or Black Sheep Squadron, and it was a World War II thing. And at any rate, one way or the other, we were invited to Las Vegas to be guests of a hotel where Mr. Sinatra was the act. I mean, it was his show. And they asked us as a group, would you guys like to come see the show? And it was like, oh,
yeah.
Who do I have to kill? You know what? Of course. And but this was towards the end of Mr. Sinatra's career. And the one thing I was really impressed by was we actually got to sit at his table.
Wow.
And
that's a big deal.
It was a big deal. It was a big deal. And the thing is, I don't know if you remember, but and I don't know how it works now. I haven't been to Las Vegas in some time, but in the old days, they would bring you, before the show started, so they wouldn't interrupt the act, they would bring you whatever you ordered. They bring you 3 drinks. The waitresses wouldn't have to be crossing in front of and behind and, you know, disturbing anything, which I thought was a great idea.
That is brilliant.
At Mr. Sinatra's table, what you ordered, they just brought you the bottle and set it down, and with a bucket of ice, and said, here you go. At any rate, he performed that night, and it was, like I say, he was a little tired, and he was just, I think, for whatever reason, he wasn't as much into it as I expected, but it was still a thrill to see him. At any rate, after the show, we all went out and did what we did. We were all young guys, and we were all drinking and carousing and what have you. And we ended up back at the hotel at like 2 or 3 in the morning, something like that. And we're walking through to the elevators through the casino, and there's a roped off area, and there's a crowd of people over there. And someone in our group said, "What's going on over there?" And someone said, "Oh, that's Frank Sinatra's private party." Well, being a 19-year-old, and I was inebriated.
Liquid courage.
Liquid courage. I thought, what a great idea for me to go over and tell him what a great show he put on, and that you knew my dad, and blah 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 blah. Well, I got about 3 steps towards that private party, and somebody who was about 3 times bigger than my dad even had me by the back of the neck, lifting me up.
Oh no!
Oh yeah, I mean, you don't just approach Sinatra's group.
True. Yeah.
Walk up there. But I didn't know better, and I was, like I say, I was not in the right frame of mind. So anyway, I'm being carried. Literally, my feet are off the ground. I'm in trouble. And I hear from the group, I hear like a hubbub, blah 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 blah, and then I hear his voice say, "Let him go. I loved his dad. Let him go."
Aww.
But that was it. It wasn't like I loved his dad. Have him come over. I want to talk to him. No, it was like, just leave him alone. He's a good guy. I loved his dad.
Don't take him out back and beat him up. Just let him go.
Yeah, let him live.
Let him live. Oh.
I used to love Las
Those little
Vegas when it was
stories
like that. Yeah.
Back in the day. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have been, you guys were talking about classic films and television, and I understand that I'm a little younger and have some learning to do, but I was a radio TV film major. Not saying I'm good at it, and certainly not good at modern technology, that's for sure. But I have an adoration for film and classic television. My favorite shows were filmed long before I was born. And we've been watching, Beegie has a film noir collection here that's crazy. We have so much fun watching classic films, and that's kind of what's getting us through this quarantine phase. You guys, do you and your wife, do you have a rhythm or a schedule, anything you're doing just to kind of get through day by day?
Well, as far as film and television goes, that's certainly how we end our days. Well,
exactly. Yeah.
And we like some of the stuff that's coming out. That's some of the modern day stuff is great as well.
Oh yeah.
But when in doubt,
Yeah.
like the other day, I finished up something I was doing late. It was later in the evening, and Danielle, my wife, had gone on to start TV without me, and she was saying, "Oh, I'm tired. I'm going to go to bed." And I was going, "Well, what are you watching?" And she said, "North by Northwest." I said, "Oh, I've seen this. I've seen this so many times, But so I sat down and I said, "Oh, well, I'll watch a couple of minutes of it."
No.
Oh God, what a masterpiece! What a great movie!
Yeah.
And every time you watch it, there's something different. You find something different. You learn something different. Hitchcock was brilliant with that.
Some of the stuff was just, and that film for me is just, God, and talk about even the smallest roles of a guy who had one line in it was just great. It was just fantastic,
Oh yeah.
Everything had a purpose.
Yeah.
Nothing was unintentional.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. That's fun. Yeah, we've watched some new things too. We watched, what was that show called? Mrs. America? Is that what it was called, BG?
Yeah.
Have you watched it yet, Dirk?
Schlafly.
But I've heard about it. I've heard it's good. Did you like it?
It's quite good, and Kate Blanchett nailed it.
She's great.
It's,
fantastic.
Yeah, there's irony in that, and anyway, we loved it. We've watched a lot of really great new releases as well, but you can always go back to the classics, and we watched a lot of Cheers and Frasier and Mary Tyler Moore and Dick Van Dyke, Golden Girls.
That reminds me, I don't know if you knew, I'm sure you did, that Carl Reiner passed away yesterday.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Speaking of Dick Van Dyke.
What a great life he had, huh?
Oh, he was 90, 8, I think it was.
Yeah, he was
And
special.
he was wonderful. Yeah,
Did you ever meet him, Dirk?
Yes, but not really. I mean, I stepped on an elevator that he was on one time.
Those are sometimes the coolest stories.
Well,
you know,
I wish I could be cool about it, but instead I was staring at the poor man, and he finally made eye contact with me. And when he did, it startled me, and I said, I said, "You're just so great." And he said,
yeah. Oh, he was nice.
So sweet.
What a brilliant guy! What a brilliant guy! And
he was
funny. Oh my gosh!
I'm always grateful for the legacy and those moments. There are things we can't control in this life, but the legacy is something that lives on, and I'm always grateful for that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I grew up around a lot of actors and celebrities and so forth. I mean, not a lot, because my dad really didn't hang out with people. He hung out with musicians as much as he hung out with anybody. But
that's cool.
Yeah, it was cool. There were still a handful of people I've met in my time who, no matter, it's like most of the time, it's like, yeah, I know, we all put our shoes on the same way,
Exactly.
No big deal. But there are exceptions to every rule. And there were times I've met a few people who I was just like Mr. Reiner. I was like, oh my God. I can't believe I'm standing here looking at this person.
Well, we've probably all had those starstruck moments. Roger talks about meeting Gladys Knight, and he was already playing he had actually already played with Sinatra for quite some time. Right. And he said for some reason meeting Gladys Knight made him completely starstruck. Wow. And that really makes me laugh with Roger, because he just seems like an old curmudgeon all the time. So if he's starstruck by anybody, that's amazing. Yeah. But meeting Tony Bennett was pretty.
Oh wow!
Pretty cool for me.
But, me too.
That would be one. That would be one for me for sure. I worked on a film with Gladys Knight. She had a part in a film that I was in one time, and so I got to hang out with her very little. But she was genuinely a sweet person.
Was there somebody that stands out as like, I'm so glad I got to work with that person? Whether they surprised you because they were really cool, or you were just so happy, you were excited to work with them and they were everything you thought they would be. Do you have one of those people?
I've probably got a few, and I'm sure there are a few people who I would put into that category. But I was lucky enough I was cast in a film, one of Jack Nicholson's films. I got to hang out with him for weeks and weeks.
Wow, that would be amazing.
He treated everybody the same.
Good.
Whether the director, all the way to the guy who was picking up cigarette butts on the set. I mean, he really was kind and generous to everybody. He was a great example of what would be a good idea for people who are making it in this industry to kind of emulate. He was really.
Yeah. Do you think that's in part why he was so successful?
It didn't hurt. I'm sure, but he had incredible qualities. But my feeling, my experience has been when I've come across a couple of people who were less than kind and ego-driven and so forth and so on. One way or the other, their work they tended to kind of disappear after a while.
Yeah.
I think that you can be very successful and be an a-hole.
Yeah.
You can be. But you have 2 or 3 things that fail, and you know what? You're probably going to say goodbye to all that.
Yeah.
But a guy like Jack Nicholson, he could have 2 or 3 flops, but everybody still wants to work with Jack Nicholson. Who doesn't want to work?
Sure, exactly.
Or any number of people, because it's a small town. If a producer's getting ready to hire or work with somebody, they'll often reach out to somebody. Oh, I know so and so, and they did this thing with him 2 years ago. How was it working with so and so? And if what they hear back was, "Get ready. It is a pain in the ass. This person is a pain in the ass." And boy, the work was good. The work was good, but I will never do. I wouldn't wish that upon anybody. Well, that's
going to carry over.
As opposed to someone saying, "Are you kidding? This person's the nicest person I know, and I loved working with them. They were always on time. They were always right on the, blah 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 blah." So,
Dirk, you, in addition to being a fantastic actor, you have written a book.
Really?
Would you tell us about this fabulous book, please?
I will. And first of all, it's a fable, so I don't want someone to think it's a tome. I haven't,
Okay.
I really love writing, and I love to explore with it. And I've actually had it sold a couple of things here and there that surprised me, that ended up in a journal or a publication that nobody saw. But I was thrilled. It's like I got a little, I got a $50 paycheck or a $25 paycheck because they published my story, that kind of thing. But at any rate, I was writing. I was on a pretty good jag there before Brooklyn Nine-Nine happened. I was writing quite a bit, and I usually read my stuff to my wife Danielle because she's honest.
Yeah,
she's definitely biased, and I know, so I understand that. But she also, in her own way, if I read something to her that I kind of didn't, it's good for me to hear it out loud, so I'd like to read it out. And
sure.
And so quite, sometimes she would say, "Huh, well, that's pretty good," or that's all right. But once in a while, but when she would say, "Oh, you're onto something there. That's really something there. You should." So she's been a great partner in that regard, in every regard, quite frankly. We've been married 30 years this year.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. And I couldn't have asked for, forget it. I can't even describe how lucky I am. I definitely got the better end of the stick on this one.
No, you're
great. At any rate, I read this one fable. I didn't know what it was at first. I didn't know if I would call it a fable then, but I read it to her, and it made her cry, and she was really moved by it. And she said, she made me promise. She said, if you ever can do something with that, if you're ever in a position to do something with that, you got to promise me that you'll do it. And I said, really? She said, no, I'm serious. You have to do something. So I put it in my file and forgot about it and kept on writing and doing various things. And then I got into this TV series, and suddenly it was like, are you going to do something with that story? Oh yeah, I did tell you. She said, yeah. You said, so there was a person who was the art director from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, who I got along really well with. And so I shared the story with him and said, what do you think of this? Because I thought it needed I thought it needed illustrations.
Yeah.
To go along. Because like I say, it's just a short fable. It takes like 10 or 15 minutes to read. But at any rate, he was crazy about it and wanted very much to be a part of it. So he started adding illustrations, and one thing that led to the next. And we ended up with what I think is a very sweet story. I know you guys are both animal lovers, and and this story, that's one of the many. There are several themes that are intertwined in this story. But if you love animals, you're probably going to at least like this story very much, and if not, love it. And at any rate, during this break, I started working with an editor, a film editor, Cynthia Segovia, who's an incredibly accomplished woman, and just a sweet person, and she just knows her stuff, but she's smart as a whip, and really knows her way around computers and digital recordings and so forth and so on. And we started working on it in January, and then the corona hit here, and we couldn't. She's down in Los Angeles, and so we've been doing it long distance, but we've just about got a film put together of it. And
wow.
We'll be putting it out pretty quickly, and we're excited to see, we'll see what happens. We'll see what goes on. My feeling about it is, if at the very least, if a handful of young people especially, or anyone really, if it means something to them, then I'll feel like we've had a great success and it's been all well worth it. And, that's kind of how I approach it.
Cool.
Yeah.
I look forward to reading it.
Well, we'll see how it goes. Like I say, I recorded it, I narrated it, and did that in Los Angeles in January, like I say, and then we started working on it together. And since then, it's been kind of like, how musicians, I'm sure you guys know how this works. Musicians will say to their friend in Nashville, could you do this guitar track? Austin, and the drums, and the Seattle, could you put the bass? And everybody from all over the world, they can actually create a piece of music together. Well, that's kind of how we've assembled this film, and it's pretty much ready to go. We're just waiting for a couple of little things to come through, and then we'll be putting it out there.
And you'll be letting us know for sure so we can help you promote it, right?
Oh, sure. Thank you. I'll tell you the title
That
right
would be great.
It's called Master and the Little Monk. That's the story.
And we have a beautiful cover that we can share.
Oh,
so, right?
Thank you.
So, of course, no, this is part of it.
Yeah,
so
it's great.
We're not Johnny Carson or whatever. We're not here to promote necessarily anything, but hey, if you have something to promote, we'll do it.
Well, I wish if the film was ready, I would just say, here's the film, but okay,
that's okay. We'll be ready to promote it whenever.
Long distance editing is a new thing for me. So there you go.
Oh, Dirk. Oh my.
You know what I'm talking about.
I do. And for all of you fans watching, we love that people are eager for concerts and things to happen in our living room. One, this isn't a hobby, so we're not giving it away for free, but we also don't have everything at our fingertips. And even if we did right now, we couldn't bring everyone in, right, to your house to do it. So there's more to it than I think people understand. Even if you are technically savvy, this makes it more difficult right now. I was talking to someone today who's running a fundraising campaign that focuses on students. And so it's anyone who from 17 to, they have to be at least a freshman in high school to a senior in college. And I'm like, they're the best people to fundraise right now because they understand all the technology. We don't understand it. They run it. They run it for all the adults. They run it. We need a 17-year-old in this house right now doing all of this. So anyway, we have, what is that?
Even a 10-year-old.
Oh, yes.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. I have family. I have nephews and a niece that would gladly come in here. They're probably embarrassed to no end of their Aunt Monty right now. I can't help them. I can't do anything. Okay. So we have a great reel that you have sent to us. And can you set up what an actor's reel is and what they're about to see a little bit?
Well, yeah, I sent this because I thought some people out there might be curious as to how, say, a producer who's never heard of you, or a casting director, or a director who's never, someone comes in and says, hey, Dirk would be good for this. And they say, I think I've heard of him, but I don't really know who he is. So they put a reel together. And this is probably a little longer than most reels would be, but it's also a little older because it was like after the second season of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, I think, something like that. At any rate, it gives you an idea of how so that if someone's sitting in their home on Sunday night and they're going to work Monday morning and say, yeah, I should probably look at this thing to see if this guy can cut it. And then if he can cut it, we'll bring him in on Tuesday or whatever and have him read for us, have him audition. So that's what this is. And it's the most recent I have because honestly, I haven't had to put another reel together because, knock on wood, I've been working. So
because you're a regular on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, you don't need it.
Right.
We love that for you. That's perfect. Well, here is Dirk Blocker's reel for all of you to see. My analogy is this is like us playing a song, or a demo of something that we're doing. And it's fantastic. We've loved watching it. I have my favorite line, which I'll tell you after this, or my favorite little. But anyway, here's Dirk Blocker.
We have to get a picture of Rosa smiling. Holt's card has to be perfect.
Guys, I got this. I can make Rosa smile. Just keep your cameras ready. Making coffee? Can you make another cup for Senor Tickle and his nueve amigos? Tickle, tickle!
What the hell, Hitchcock?
Ow! 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 I think you sprained Senor Tickle.
Next time, I break it off.
Hey, Hitchcock. Help me out, man. I'm so bored. Let me jump back on that murder with you.
No, I got it.
Come on, man. Let me just see the...
No, don't touch it! You're contagious. Everything could fall apart.
Peralta, leave Hitchcock alone.
Come in. Hi, Gina. What's going on?
I'm looking for Captain Holt. Why aren't you at the tactical village?
I'm not allowed back. Not after last year.
What you gonna do, cop?
Hitchcock.
You shot yourself in the heart?
Turns out, I don't handle pressure very well.
Honestly, how are you a detective?
Funny story.
My grandfather was a farmer. This song gets to me every time.
It's beautiful. You must be so proud.
I sure am.
How long have you two been together?
We've been partners for almost 30 years.
So do you two ever get harassed at work?
Harassed? For what?
For being a gay couple who works together in the NYPD.
Try the heel. Still don't feel anything.
Awesome. I wish I had nerve damage.
I love these pills. They give me so much energy, and I can eat whatever I want. Oh, God. He's dead!
Just relax. Okay?
Yeah. No. Believe it or not, this is me. Relaxed. Wine?
Sure.
I've never done anything like this before.
Trent.
Could I see a list of 82 Bordeaux's? What I'm trying to say is that it's been a while since I've been out on a date.
When did your wife die?
How did you know?
I just do.
She had ovarian cancer 8 months ago. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, this must really be sexy, huh?
Trent, you are not gonna say the wrong thing or scare me away.
Tell me who has me for Secret Santa.
No, that takes all the fun out of it. It's Scully. He got you a scarf. I'll make him return it.
Yes, you will.
Hey, can I get your file on that Atlantic Avenue drug ring? Sarge gave me and Scully the case.
What?
No! Why did you do that? I know I deserved it, but why?
I know what to do. Hitchcock, you ever play Quasi Cupcakes?
I love that game. I just got up to Sprinkle City.
What level are you on, Captain Holt?
Sprinkle City.
We have so much in common.
Look at that, I'm curious.
Please let me have the tape.
No dice.
I don't know how to make you cool. I'm not even that cool myself. I mean, sure, I have a pizza stone.
You have cool friends, like Jake. I just want to be part of a conversation where Jake uses my name and nobody insults me.
Hey, Jake.
Hey, Charles.
Who's this with me?
Hitchcock?
Well, we should go now.
Wow, what a high. Do you guys feel this way all the time?
I did what you wanted. Give me the tape.
Oh, no, we're not done yet. Next, I want you to tell everyone you think I'm handsome. Make it seem natural.
No one has anything to say?
Hitchcock is very handsome.
Why, thank you, Boyle.
I'll take this bullet for you.
Hitchcock, what are you doing?
I thought, aren't we all gonna know?
What happened to Scully and Hitchcock?
They're busy cleaning Hitchcock's ear.
Yeah.
Okay, Senor Tickle, would you like to tell us a little bit?
Stephanie Beatrice. She's the
when
best.
when you did that, I was like, oh my God, that's the funniest thing I've heard in a long time. Senor Tickle. If I see you in person, don't be embarrassed if I call you Senor Tickle.
Just put me in a half Nelson and all's forgiven.
I think actors and musicians are so much alike because you work with other people. It's usually an ensemble. Sometimes you're put in a situation where the improvisation, you've got to work with whomever you're with, and the dialogue that's whatever's been given to you. I love that. I love the energy of that moment. And then there are times when sometimes those things don't necessarily pan out. But I know Beegie has a lot of stories. Do you have any stories about things like that?
Well, I just, first of all, I don't know if BG, do you remember, because I don't think, Monica, you are old enough to remember, but in Los Angeles, there was a place called Stein's on Vine. Do you remember that at all? Maury K. Stein was an excellent clarinet player who played with the LA Philharmonic. And he opened up a shop where he could work on people's instruments, and he was on Vine Street, right across the street from the Musicians Union. So it was always full of people coming to buy reeds or get their horns fixed or strings done, or, whatever. And I was a teenager at the time, thinking that I wanted to be a musician and wanted to be into that world. And really, the only reason I had any reason to be in any band was because I was the only one who wasn't afraid to sing. Badly. I could bellow it out, But I also thought of myself, I like to think maybe I was going to be a saxophone player. I loved Cannonball Adderley and John Coltrane and these guys. And I just thought that's my ticket. That's where I'm going. But we were a rock band, and we were so loud and distorted and horrifyingly bad that my colleagues said, we can't really hear your horn because when you put it into the microphone, we get the feedback, and then and it's like nobody, like really it didn't matter. But they said, you should go to Maury K. Stein. You should go to Maury Stein's on Vine and have him put an amplifier attach it to your horn so you can play through the loudspeakers. So I said, great, what a great idea. So I take my old tenor sax into Maury K. Stein to tell him what I want. He said, yeah, we can do that, no problem. Calls about a week later. I'm not old enough to drive, so someone drives me down there. And I go into the store, and he goes, well, here it is. And I said, boy, that looks great. Thank you. And he said, no, wait a second. You need to play it. And I was going, oh, no, I'm good. And he said, no, you have to play it because I don't want you going home and then calling me a few days later saying that something doesn't work. So you need to play it so I know you're happy with it. And I said, oh, okay. And then he plugs it into the store's stereo sound system. So by now, the conversation, the half a dozen or so pro musicians from across the street of the Union, they're all staring over to see what's going on over here. What's this all about? And now I've got the horn in my hand, and they're all looking at me and wondering what's going on. So I honk out the most horrible. To me, it sounded pretty good, but I'm sure it was the most horrible sounding thing ever. And I said, boy, that's great. And Maury K. Stein said, why the fuck would anybody want to amplify that? That's why I'm not a musician. I didn't.
Oh gosh, that is funny.
I had the discipline later in life to work on my work as an actor, but I just never could figure out. I wasn't meant to be.
Well,
didn't you have a friend that said some people are meant to knit and some people are meant to play the piano?
Oh, that was
like
Maxine Gregg Gordon. She was the lady that was married to Dexter Gordon, who wrote the book about him after he passed away. She and I have been friends since we were 21, and because she was married to a bass player that I used to work here with in Boots Randolph's band. And we met when we were 21 and have been fast friends ever since. But anyway, she was spending some time with us one summer. She came down for a week and headed to Memphis to some of her kinfolk. And she's an expert at everything she does. She sewed, she could cook, she could knit, she could do all kinds of stuff. So I asked her to teach me to knit. And of course, she knew I was a piano player and had worked with her husband. And so she suffered through several lessons at my house. And I would get this string going like this and do a couple of nice stitches. And then it would go, and it was just awful. I mean, it was just awful. And about the third or fourth day, she came over and she said, I'm going to take the knit now, the thing. And I'm going to put the needles over here, out of the way. Now, some people can play the piano, and some people can knit. You can play the piano. So I never tried it again.
That's so funny.
Well, she's somebody that somebody ought to write a book about. I mean, she's really a wonderful character. Yeah.
Well, I've always figured, if they're musicians, well, they have to have people to listen. You have to have an audience. So
Absolutely. We
I'm a
say that all the time.
I'm a great audience.
You are.
I do love music, and I love hearing you guys play. And